Hey folks, imagine you're about to overhaul your gaming setup and a friend of yours, let's call him Alex, just sent you a text. I'm thinking about a massive 39-inch curved monitor, but I'm scared it'll be a money sink if it doesn't actually feel better than my 27-inch 144Hz panel. I get that hesitation every time someone eyes a premium display. You've probably been there, wondering whether the hype around ultra-wide OLEDs lives up to the price tag, and whether the extra curvature will actually improve your aim or just make you cringe after a few hours. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So let's break down the LG 39-inch Ultragear OLED curved gaming monitor and see if it truly earns its place on a serious gamer's desk, or if it's more of a novelty that looks great on a YouTube unboxing. First off, the biggest draw is the 800R curvature. In plain terms, that means the screen wraps around you more aggressively than the typical 1800R or 1500R panels you see on most ultra-wide monitors. When you sit about a foot away, the center of the screen feels like it's practically hugging your line of sight. In practice, that curvature shines in racing simulators and first-person shooters where your peripheral vision matters. I tried a quick test in a popular battle royale title, and the natural curve helped keep enemies popping up on the far sides from being lost in the edge of the screened blind spot. It also makes the massive 39-inch real estate feel less daunting. You're not forced to constantly move your head, the curve does a lot of the work for you. But that same curve can be a double-edged sword. If you're primarily a strategy or MOBA player, you'll find a lot of UI elements clustered towards the middle, while the edges become less important. In those games, the curvature isn't a game changer, and some players even report motion-induced discomfort after long sessions. They describe a subtle head tilt feeling after an hour of continuous play. That's why this monitor is a solid choice for people who thrive on immersive, fast-paced titles, but it might be overkill for someone who mainly does point-and-click or content creation where a flat plane is easier to align with design tools. The OLED panel is the next big piece of the puzzle. OLED gives you pixel-perfect blacks and vibrant colors because each pixel emits its own light. For gamers, the practical payoff is immediate. The contrast boost makes dark scenes in horror games genuinely terrifying and highlights enemies glinting in shadows. I tested a modern shooter with low light maps, and targets that were practically invisible on a standard LCD suddenly stood out like neon against the backdrop. The Visa DisplayHDR True Black 400 certification backs up those claims, promising a peak brightness of 400 nits while retaining deep blacks. In a brightly lit room, however, the monitor can struggle to stay punchy. The peak brightness isn't quite enough to compete with a high-end QLED in a sun-flooded office. If you game in a dim or controlled lighting environment, you'll love the OLED's pop. If your room is a window-filled loft, you might find the HDR performance underwhelming compared to a brighter panel. A technical highlight that matters for competitive play is the 240 Hz refresh rate paired with a 0.03 milliseconds response time, numbers that sound insane on paper. In real-world terms, that means motion blur is virtually non-existent, and the screen can keep up with frame rates that exceed 200 frames per second without stuttering. I ran a benchmark in a fast-paced FPS at 200 frames per second, and the image stayed crisp, with no ghosting even during rapid strafing. The monitor also supports NVIDIA G-Sync compatibility and AMD FreeSync Premium Pro, so you get tier-free gameplay whether you're on an RTX or Radeon GPU. The practical upside is clear. Smoother visuals translate into more accurate tracking and less eye strain during marathon sessions. Now, let's talk about the practical downsides that aren't always obvious in the spec sheet. OLED, while fantastic for color, has a notorious issue: burn-in. LG claims a pixel shift and screensaver to mitigate it, but if you leave static UI elements, think health bars, mini-maps, or a constant HUD on the screen for many hours, you could eventually see ghost images. For a gamer who streams or leaves the monitor on for extended periods, that's a risk worth weighing. The monitor also lacks a built-in USB hub beyond the Type-C port, meaning you'll still need a separate dongle or hub for your peripherals. If you expected a clean all-in-one desk solution, you'll need to manage extra cables. Another hidden cost is the power draw. OLED panels tend to be more power-hungry than LCDs, especially when you push them to 400 nits for HDR peaks. In a typical 4-hour gaming session, the monitor will consume a noticeable amount of electricity, which can add up if you're a power-conscious user. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's something you'll notice on your electricity bill if you game heavily. So, who should actually buy the LG 39-inch Ultragear OLED? If you're a serious competitive gamer who values